Commander Zex3 stared at the readings on his screen for the third time. The numbers still made no sense. His ship's computer kept flashing red warnings across every display, but the distress beacon was real. Someone was calling for help from the planet below. "Sir, we should leave," said Science Officer Krylinak from his station. His voice carried worry. "The planet is beyond dangerous. Our computers cannot even calculate how long we would survive. Down there." Zexari looked at the planet spinning slowly beneath their ship. From space, it looked almost normal. Blue and green swirls of color mixed with white clouds. But the readings told a different story. The atmospheric pressure changed like a wild beast, going from crushing weight to thin air in just hours. Temperatures swung from freezing cold to boiling hot across the surface. Electromagnetic storms raged without end, creating lightning that could destroy their ship. "The beacon is still active," Communications Officer Hicksball reported. "It has been sending the same message for 6 days now. Standard distress call. Someone needs rescue." Zex3 felt torn. His duty was clear. When someone called for help, the Galactic Survey answered, but this planet defied every rule of survival they knew. According to their databases, nothing could live down there. The computer simply displayed fatal when asked about landing chances. "Run. Another scan," he ordered. "Full spectrum. Look for any signs of life." The scan took several minutes. When it finished, Krylinak's face went pale. "Sir, you need to see this." The new readings showed impossible things. Artificial structures dotted the surface. Not emergency shelters or crashed ship pieces, but real buildings. Some looked like homes. Others appeared to be workshops or storage areas. Most shocking of all, the scanners detected what looked like farmland. "That cannot be right," Zex3 muttered. "Run it again." Second scan confirmed the first. Someone had not just survived on this death world. They were living there. The structures spread across several locations, connected by what appeared to be roads. Gardens and fields surrounded many of the buildings, Hicksball called out, excitement in his voice. "I am picking up radio transmissions." "From the distress beacon?" "No, sir. Different signals."
Oh.
"Multiple sources. They are using an unknown language, but the patterns suggest regular communication. Not emergency calls. Normal conversation." Zexari listened as Hicksball played the intercepted transmissions through the bridge speakers. The voices sounded relaxed, even friendly. At one point, he heard what could only be described as laughter. "How is this possible?" Krylinak whispered. "The surface temperature right now is hot enough to melt most metals. The air is toxic. There's creatures live down there that our military classifies as ship killers." The commander studied the data again. Long-range scans showed heat signatures moving around the settlements, not just inside buildings, but outside in the open. Some appeared to be working in the fields during the worst part of the day, when the heat should kill anything in minutes. "Perhaps they live underground," suggested Hicksball. "The structures we see might just be entrances to deeper facilities," Krylinak said, checking his instruments. "The scans show activity on the surface. Whatever these beings are, they work and live in conditions that should be impossible." Zex3 made his decision. Prepare a message for Galactic Command. "Tell them we have found inhabitants on a planet that our systems classify as uninhabitable. Request guidance on contact." "Protocols," Sir Krylinak said carefully. "Regulations are clear. We classify the planet as uninhabitable and move on. No contact with potential survivors until proper assessment teams arrive." "Those regulations assume normal circumstances," Zex3 replied. "This situation is far from normal." The response from Galactic Command took 3 hours to arrive. The message was brief and direct. "Follow standard protocols. Classify the planet as uninhabitable. Arrange for proper assessment teams to investigate later." But Zex3 could not stop thinking about the voices they had heard, the laughter, the casual conversations. Whoever lived down there did not sound like desperate survivors clinging to life. They sounded like people living normal, happy lives. Sir Hicksball said, "I have been analyzing the radio transmissions. The language is completely unknown, but I am detecting some interesting patterns." "What kind of patterns?" Some of the transmissions include what appear to be technical discussions. They are talking about repairs, modifications, and improvements to various systems. The complexity suggests advanced engineering knowledge. On a planet where advanced technology should fail immediately, Krylinak added, Zexari walked to the main viewing port and stared down at the planet. Somewhere on that impossible world, beings were living lives that defied everything his people understood about survival. They were not just alive, but apparently thriving. Begin preparations for a surface mission, he ordered. Sir, that violates direct orders from command, Krylinak protested. Command's orders assume we are dealing with standard survivors on a standard death world. But if these beings can live normally in conditions that would kill us in minutes, we need to understand how. This could change everything we know about life in the universe. The ship's computer continued flashing warnings about the planet below. Every sensor screamed danger. Every calculation showed death for anyone foolish enough to attempt landing. But the radio transmissions continued, filled with voices that spoke of ordinary life in an extraordinary place. Exteri knew he was about to make the most important decision of his career. The safe choice was to follow orders, mark the planet as uninhabitable, and leave. The right choice was to discover the truth about the impossible inhabitants below. He chose truth. Prepare the shuttle, he commanded. We are going down. The shuttle ride down to the planet's surface was the most terrifying experience of Dr. Veltar's life. Even with the strongest environmental suits their civilization had ever built, the shuttle's hull groaned and creaked as they descended through the chaotic atmosphere. Pressure dropping fast, Hicksball reported from the pilot's seat. Now, rising again, these swings would crush most vessels. Temperature just jumped 40 degrees in 10 seconds, added Dr. Veltar, watching her instruments with growing alarm. How does anything survive these changes? Commander Zextheri gripped his seat as the shuttle shook violently. Lightning strikes hit their shields every few seconds. Electromagnetic storms were so intense that their navigation systems kept failing and rebooting. At landing site coming up, as Paul announced. I can see the settlement. Through the shuttle's window, they could see a collection of buildings spread across a valley. Gardens and fields surrounded the structures. Smoke rose from several chimneys, suggesting active habitation. What shocked them most was seeing figures moving around outside the buildings, apparently unprotected. The shuttle landed with a hard thump. Immediately, their sensors detected the harsh environment outside. The air was thick with particles that would damage their breathing systems. The ground temperature was hot enough to melt certain metals. In the distance, they could hear the roars of creatures that their databases classified as extremely dangerous. Environmental suits at maximum protection, Zex-3 ordered. Stay close together. We have maybe 30 minutes before the suit. Systems start failing. They opened the shuttle door and stepped onto the surface. The gravity was stronger than expected, making each step feel heavy. The air shimmered with heat waves. Strange plants grew everywhere, their leaves looking sharp enough to cut through metal. Commander Dr. Veltar whispered, "Look at those crops." In the nearby field, plants grew in neat rows despite the hostile soil. The plants looked healthy and strong, nothing like the struggling vegetation they expected to find on a death world. "Someone is coming," Hicksball said, pointing toward the settlement. A figure approached them across the field. As it got closer, they could see it was a bipedal being, similar to their own species but with some differences. What amazed them was that the being wore only simple clothing. No environmental suit at all. The being stopped a few meters away and spoke in a language they did not recognize. Then, to their complete surprise, it switched to broken galactic standard. "Hello, strangers. You from Skyship? I'm Jake Morrison. Welcome to our home." Commander Zex-3 stepped forward, his voice translator working to convert his words. "Greetings. Jake Morrison. I am Commander Zex-3 of the Galactic Survey. We received a distress signal from this location." Jake looked confused for a moment, then his face brightened. "Oh, you mean the old beacon?" "Yes, that thing has been sending signals for years. We keep meaning to shut it off, but it is useful. For calling ships when we need parts." "You use it to call ships?" Dr. Velter asked in amazement. For parts? Sure, ships crash here sometimes. Crews usually do not survive the landing, but we salvage what we can. Always need materials for repairs. Jake spoke casually as if discussing the weather. The away team exchanged looks of shock. This being talked about spaceship crashes like they were common events. Jake Morrison, Zex Theory, said carefully, "Are you not in distress? Do you not need rescue?" Jake laughed, a sound that was somehow both alien and familiar. Rescue is our home. We have been here for generations. Why would we need rescue? Because, Dr. Veltar said slowly, our instruments show this planet is extremely dangerous. The conditions should be fatal to most life forms. Dangerous? Jake looked around at the landscape. I suppose it can be challenging sometimes. You learn to work with it. My daughter Lucy says Earth was much worse during the old days. Earth? Hicksball asked.
How?
Our original homeworld? The stories say it was a real death trap. Constant storms, huge predators, ice ages, volcanic eruptions. This place is much more peaceful. The three aliens stared at Jake in complete silence. This world was more peaceful than his species' home planet. Would you like to meet my family? Jake asked. My wife Karen would love to see your ship. She's good with technology. Lucy can speak better Galactic Standard than me. You have a family here? Zexthery asked weakly. Of course. About 200 people in this settlement alone. We have 3 other communities on this continent. Growing every year. Jake started walking toward the buildings, gesturing for them. To follow, the away team had no choice but to walk with him, their instruments screaming warnings about the environment around them. As they approached the settlement, they saw more inhabitants. Adults and children moved around freely, working on various tasks. Some were tending gardens. Others were building additions to houses. All of them were dressed in simple clothing that provided no protection against the harsh conditions. Jake, Dr. Velter said, how do you survive the temperature extremes? The toxic atmosphere? The dangerous predators? Oh, you get used to it. Humans are pretty adaptable. The temperature swings are not too bad if you stay hydrated. Air's fine. Once your lungs adjust. As for the predators, most of them avoid the settlement. The ones that do not, well, we have ways of dealing with them. They reached the first building, which appeared to be Jake's home. A woman emerged from the doorway, wiping her hands on a cloth. She smiled when she saw the visitors. Hey, Karen Knees, are the folks from the ship we saw landing. They speak Galactic Standard. Karen Morrison looked at the 3 aliens in their bulky environmental suits and frowned with concern. Are you all right in those things? You look uncomfortable. It is not that hot today. We require protection from the environment, Zexary. Explained. Protection from what? Karen asked genuinely. Before anyone could answer, a young woman appeared in the doorway. She looked to be in her late teens, with bright eyes and a confident smile. You must be from the Galactic Survey, she said in perfect Galactic Standard. I am Lucy Morrison. I learned your language from some teaching computers we found in a crashed ship a few years ago. Dr. Veltar nearly dropped her scanner. You learned our language from salvaged equipment? Yes, it was not too difficult. I also learned about your technology, your history, and your cultures. Very interesting. I have been hoping more ships would visit so I could practice speaking with real galactic citizens. The away team realized they were not dealing with primitive survivors clinging to life on a hostile world.
Hi, these humans.
Were thriving, learning, and growing stronger with each challenge their planet presented, and they were completely unaware that what they called home was the most dangerous place there visitors had ever encountered. 3 days later, the away team was still in the human settlement. What they had planned as a brief diplomatic contact had become something much more important. Every hour brought new discoveries that challenged everything they thought they knew about life in the universe. Dr. Veltar sat in the Morrison family kitchen, watching Karen repair a power generator. The device was a mixture of technology from at least 4 different alien civilizations, combined with human modifications that should not work, but somehow did. This coupling here came from a Zentari merchant vessel that crashed 2 years ago, Karen explained. pointing to a crystalline component. The power core is from a military scout ship, probably Cordian design, but the real trick is this regulator circuit I built myself. She showed Dr. Veltar a crude-looking device made from scrap metal and local materials. Your people build everything. 2 exact specifications. Very precise, very reliable. But when something breaks, the whole system fails. This little addition makes the generator adapt to problems instead of shutting down. Dr. Veltar scanned the device with her instruments. The readings made no sense. The human addition should have caused the entire system to explode. Instead, it was running at 90% efficiency, better than most factory new generators.
Ow.
Did you learn to do this? She asked. Trial and error mostly. We have had a lot of crashed ships over the years. You learn to make things work with whatever parts you can find. Outside, Commander Zixtheory was having his own eye-opening experience. He followed Pete Collins through the forest surrounding the settlement, watching the human track something through terrain that would challenge a military assault team. There, Pete whispered, pointing through the thick vegetation. Razor cat. Big one. Zixtheory looked where Pete pointed and felt his blood freeze. The creature was enormous, easily 3 meters long with claws that could slice through starship hull plating. Its teeth were like curved swords. According to the Galactic Survey database, a single razor cat could destroy an entire exploration team. Pete calmly raised a weapon. He had built himself from salvaged parts and local materials. The design was crude but functional. Took careful. Aim and fired once. The massive predator dropped instantly. Good eating on that one, Pete said with satisfaction. Karen makes an excellent stew with razor cat meat. You hunt these creatures regularly? Zixtheory asked, his voice shaking slightly. Sure, they taste good, and their hide makes great work clothes. Plus, if we do not keep their numbers down, they multiply too fast and become a real problem. Pete walked casually over to the dead predator and began field dressing it with a knife made from alien metal. He worked quickly and efficiently, clearly having done this many times before. The first settlers had trouble with these things, Pete continued. Lost a few people before we figured out their hunting patterns. Now we know where they nest, when they feed, how they move. They are just another part of living here. Meanwhile, Hickspaul was having the most shocking discovery of all. He sat with Lucy Morrison in her workshop, surrounded by technology from dozens of different galactic civilizations. The young human moved between devices with casual expertise, repairing, modifying, and improving systems that certified engineers would hesitate to touch. This communication array came from a diplomatic vessel, Lucy explained, working on a complex control panel. The original designers made it too sensitive. It picked up every electromagnetic pulse from the storms and shut down constantly. So, I modified the filtering system. She showed him her changes. The modifications were elegant and effective, solving a problem that had plagued that particular design for decades. How old are you? Hickspaul asked. 16 standard years? Why? And you learned all this from crashed ships? Mostly. My parents taught me the basics, but I learned the advanced stuff by taking things apart and putting them back together. Sometimes they work better afterward. Lucy picked up another device, one that Hickspaul recognized as a navigation computer from a galactic survey vessel. This one was tricky. The original programming assumed stable atmospheric conditions. Useless. Here, where the electromagnetic storms never stop. So I rewrote the core algorithms to account for constant interference. Hickspaul examined her work. The navigation computer now functioned better in chaotic conditions than the original had in perfect ones. A 16-year-old human had improved on technology developed by some of the galaxy's best engineers. Lucy, have other ships crashed here? Oh yes, we get maybe 3 or 4 crashes per year. The planetary conditions overload most navigation systems. Life support fails pretty quickly too. We try to help the survivors when we can, but usually we just salvage the useful parts. How many ships? Lucy thought for a moment. Since I was born, maybe 60 or 70. Before that, my parents say there were many more. You have a storage facility full of parts from different civilizations. That evening, the three aliens gathered in the guest room the Morrisons had provided for them. They compared their discoveries in whispered voices. "Their adaptation rate is impossible," Dr. Veltar reported. "I have been monitoring their vital signs. Their bodies adjust to environmental changes in real time. Temperature spikes that would kill us barely register on their systems. The weapons technology is equally disturbing," Zexthery added. "Pete Collins built that hunting rifle from scrap metal and local materials. It is more effective against armored targets than our standard military weapons. But the most concerning discovery is their technological integration," Hickspaul said. "Lucy Morrison has reverse-engineered and improved technology from over 20 different civilizations. She does it like it is a hobby." They sat in silence, considering the implications. These humans did not just survive on a death world. They used its challenges to become stronger, smarter, and more capable. "There is something else," Dr. Veltar said quietly. "I asked Jake about their original homeworld, this Earth he mentioned. According to him, it was even more dangerous than this place. Ice ages, massive predators, volcanic activity, unstable weather patterns. This planet is what they consider an improvement. What kind of species evolves on a world that makes this place look safe?" Zexthery wondered. "It's the kind that turns disasters into opportunities," Hickspaul replied. "The kind that sees a crashed spaceship and thinks useful parts, instead of tragic loss. The kind that looks at a predator capable of destroying military teams and sees dinner." The three aliens realized they were not just dealing with survivors or even colonists. They were meeting representatives of a species that had been forged by conditions so extreme that this death world felt like home to them. And if the crashed ship count was accurate, humanity had been quietly learning about galactic civilization. For decades, it's growing stronger and more knowledgeable with each encounter. The question was no longer whether humanity could survive contact with galactic civilization. The question was whether galactic civilization was ready for humanity. 2 weeks after Commander Zexthery's report reached the Galactic Council, the massive dreadnought Void Piercer entered the system. Its arrival changed everything. The ship was 10 times larger than Zexthery's exploration vessel, bristling with weapons and sensors. This was not a rescue mission or a diplomatic contact. This was an assessment. Military Assessment Coordinator Drakmer stood on the bridge of the Void Piercer, studying the reports from the surface. His job was simple but crucial. Determine if humanity represented a threat to galactic stability. If they did, recommend appropriate containment measures. "The initial reports are concerning," he said to his staff. "A species that thrives on a death world, casually hunts apex predators, and reverse engineers our technology. It must be evaluated properly." "Sir," his aide reported, "Counselor Prime Narthex has sent specific instructions. If humanity proves too dangerous, we are authorized to recommend full quarantine or relocation." Drakmer nodded. The Galactic Council had dealt with dangerous species before. Some were relocated to safer worlds where they could be monitored. Others were quarantined on their home planets until they developed proper civilization standards. A few had been classified as too dangerous for any contact at all. "Begin landing operations. Set up the assessment facility. We will test these humans properly." The assessment team landed with military precision. Unlike the small away team from the exploration vessel, they brought heavy equipment, armed guards, and technology designed to measure every aspect of a species' capabilities. They constructed a fortified compound on the edge of the human settlement, complete with testing chambers and monitoring stations. Jake Morrison watched the construction with interest. "Big ship this time," he commented to his wife Karen. "Much more serious than the last visitors? Should we be worried?" Karen asked. "Probably not. They seem like the careful type. Will want to run tests, ask questions. We can help them understand. We are not a threat." The first test began 3 days later. Coordinator Druckmer had selected what he considered a reasonable challenge. A mechanical problem that typically took trained engineers several hours to solve, presented under mild stress conditions. Roy Patterson, the settlement's primary mechanic, volunteered for the test. He was a quiet man in his 30s who had learned. his skills maintaining the hybrid technology systems that kept the settlement running. The scenario is simple, Drachmer explained. Your life support system has failed. You have 30 minutes before the air becomes toxic. Using only the materials provided, restore the system to working order. Roy looked at the disabled machinery. It was alien technology, nothing like the human or hybrid systems he usually worked with. But he had learned long ago that all technology followed certain basic principles. Can I take it apart? He asked. If you think that will help. Roy began disassembling the life support unit. Within minutes, he had identified the problem, found a workaround using materials not originally intended for that purpose, and restored the system to operation. Total time, 12 minutes. Interesting, Drachmer noted. But perhaps the test was too simple. The second test involved environmental adaptation. Beth Hughes, a teacher who had volunteered, was placed in a chamber where conditions changed rapidly and unpredictably. Temperature swings, pressure changes, atmospheric composition shifts. The test was designed to overwhelm most species' ability to adapt. Beth not only adapted to each change, but began predicting the next shift based on patterns she detected in the control system. By the end of the test, she was adjusting her breathing and posture to prepare for changes before they occurred. How did you know the temperature was about to rise? Dr. Veltar asked afterward. The air circulation changed about 10 seconds before each temperature shift, Beth explained. Once I noticed the pattern, it was easy to prepare. The third test was more complex. Amy Clark, who had medical training, and Dan Foster, a construction worker, were given a scenario where their settlement was under attack. They had to coordinate a defense using only local resources and knowledge. The test supervisors expected confusion, panic, maybe some basic defensive measures. Instead, they watched Amy and Dan transform the testing facility into a fortress. Used the planet's natural hazards as weapons. Channeled the electromagnetic storms to disable simulated enemy equipment. And turned the local predator population into an early warning system. The Razorcats always get aggressive before major weather changes, Dan explained to the astonished test supervisors. If you know how to read their behavior, they tell you exactly when the big lightning strikes are coming. Amy had, meanwhile, figured out how to use the facility's own medical sensors to detect approaching threats. Your equipment is really sensitive, she said. It's much better than anything we have. But you are using it wrong for this environment. Each test revealed the same pattern. Humans did not just solve problems. They found solutions that the test designers had never considered. They used resources in ways that violated standard safety procedures but proved remarkably effective. It turned disadvantages into advantages and obstacles into tools. The final test was designed to measure human aggression and threat potential. Steve Parker, who had military experience from Earth before the settlement was established, was given command of a group of volunteers in a simulated invasion scenario. The test supervisors created what they thought was an impossible situation. Superior enemy forces, limited resources, harsh environmental conditions. Most species would either surrender or fight a desperate losing battle. Steve and his team did neither. They used the planet's hostile environment as their primary weapon. They lured the simulated invaders into areas where the electromagnetic storms would disable their equipment. They channeled dangerous predators toward enemy positions. They used the unpredictable weather patterns to mask their movements and create strategic advantages. Most importantly, they did not try to defeat the invaders in direct combat. Instead, they made the planet itself fight for them. Every natural hazard became a defensive system. Every environmental challenge became a tactical advantage. How did you develop these strategies? Coordinator Drachmer asked after the simulation ended. Same way we developed everything else here, Steve replied. We learned to work with what we have instead of fighting against it. This planet wants to kill you if you fight it. But if you understand it, it will protect you. At night, Drachmer reviewed the test results with his staff. The numbers were troubling, but not in the way he had expected. They are not aggressive, he concluded. They do not seek to dominate or conquer. But their capability level is unprecedented. They turn every challenge into an opportunity, every problem into a solution, every disadvantage into a strength. Are they a threat to galactic stability? His aide asked. Drakmer considered the question carefully. Traditional threat assessment focused on military strength, aggressive tendencies, and expansionist goals. Humanity showed none of these traits, but they demonstrated something potentially more significant. They are a threat to our understanding of what is possible, he said finally. Every rule we have about survival, adaptation, and problem-solving, they break. Not through superior technology or overwhelming force, but through ingenuity and determination. Real question was not whether humanity was dangerous. The question was what would happen when other species learned that the impossible was actually quite ordinary, if you approached it the right way. Humanity had spent generations turning a death world into a home. What would they do when given access to an entire galaxy? The Galactic Council chamber had never been so packed. Representatives from every major civilization filled the vast hall, all waiting to hear the decision about humanity. The debate had raged for 3 weeks, with some demanding immediate quarantine. While others argued for standard first contact protocols, Counselor Prime Narthex stood at the central podium, his report in hand. The evidence is clear, he announced to the assembled delegates. Humanity represents an unprecedented threat to galactic stability. Their adaptability is beyond our measurement scales. Their problem-solving abilities defy logical explanation. They turn deathworlds into homes and disasters into opportunities. Murmurs of concern rippled through the chamber. Several representatives nodded in agreement. We have dealt with dangerous species before, Narthex continued, but never one that thrives on challenges that would destroy our best military units. I recommend immediate quarantine protocols. Humanity must be contained on their current world until we can develop proper safety measures. Dr. Veltar rose from her seat in the observer section. Counselor, may I present additional evidence? Narthex looked annoyed but nodded. You may. Speak, Doctor. During my time with the humans, I observed something the assessment reports may have missed. Yes, they are incredibly capable. Yes, they solve problems in ways that seem impossible. But their greatest strength is not their adaptability. It is their willingness to help others, even at great personal risk. She activated a holographic display, showing scenes from the human settlement. They have rescued survivors from over 70 crashed ships. They share their technology freely. They teach survival skills to anyone who asks. When our own shuttle nearly crashed during an electromagnetic storm, 3 humans risked their lives to guide us to safety. Commander Zexery stood to support her. The humans have had contact with our technology for decades. If they were truly dangerous, they could have built weapons, formed armies, prepared for conquest. Dead, they built better farming equipment and more efficient power generators. The debate continued for hours. Some representatives remained convinced that humanity's capabilities made them too dangerous for normal contact. Others argued that their helpful nature made them valuable potential allies. Then the crisis struck. Alarms began blaring throughout the council station. Emergency broadcasts filled the communication channels. A massive solar flare had erupted from the nearby star, sending waves of radiation toward the station. The protective shields were failing. Evacuation procedures began immediately, but the evacuation ships could not launch. The same electromagnetic interference that made the human world so dangerous was now crippling the station's systems. Ships that tried to leave crashed back to the docking bays, their navigation systems fried by the radiation storm. All systems failing, the station commander reported to the council. We have maybe 6 hours before the radiation reaches lethal levels. Evacuation is impossible. Panic spread through the chamber. Thousands of beings were trapped on a station that would soon become uninhabitable. The radiation levels would kill everyone aboard within hours. Counselor Prime Narthex contacted the Void Piercer, still in orbit around the human world. Coordinator Drakmer, we need immediate evacuation support. Can your ship reach us? Negative, came the reply. The radiation storm extends throughout this system. Our navigation systems cannot function in these conditions. Any ship attempting to travel through the interference would be lost. The council chamber filled with desperate voices as representatives tried to contact their home worlds, hoping for rescue that everyone knew would arrive too late. Then Jake Morson's voice came. Through the communication system, Council Station, this is Jake Morrison from the Human Settlement. We heard about your problem. We can help. Narthex stared at the communication console. You can help. How? You have ships, Jake replied calmly. Built from salvaged parts, designed to work in electromagnetic storms. Our navigation systems function fine in this kind of interference. We can get your people out. Impossible, Narthex said. No ships can navigate in these conditions. Ours can. Lucy modified the navigation computers years ago. We fly through storms like this all the time. Within an hour, human ships began arriving at the Council Station. They were ugly vessels, built from parts of dozens of different civilizations, held together with human engineering and determination. But they flew through the radiation storm like it was calm space. Karen. Morrison piloted the lead ship with Lucy as her navigator. Council Station, we are beginning evacuation procedures. Our ships are shielded against the radiation. You will be safe. The evacuation was like nothing the galactic representatives had ever seen. The humans worked with incredible efficiency, loading passengers, coordinating between ships, managing resources. They treated the deadly radiation storm as a minor inconvenience. Roy Patterson and Dan Foster worked together to repair critical station systems, buying precious time for the evacuation. They used spare parts from their ships and techniques that violated every safety protocol but somehow worked perfectly. Pete Collins and Steve Parker coordinated the rescue of beings trapped in damaged sections of the station. They moved through areas where the radiation should have been fatal. Protected by suits they had built themselves from salvaged materials. Amy Clark set up a medical station on her ship, treating beings who had been injured during the crisis. Her equipment was a mixture of human innovation and alien technology. Crude-looking, but incredibly effective. Most remarkably, the humans refused any payment for the rescue. When Counselor Prime Narthex tried to offer compensation, Jake simply shook his head. You help people who need help, he said. That is what you do. The evacuation took 8 hours. Every single being on the Council Station was saved. Not one human was lost, despite the incredible risks they had taken. When the crisis ended, the Council Chamber was relocated to a safer station. The debate about humanity resumed, but the tone had completely changed. Counselor Prime Narthex stood once again at the podium, but his message was different. 3 days ago, I stood here arguing that humanity was too dangerous for contact with galactic civilization. I was wrong. He paused, looking out at the representatives who had all been rescued by human courage and ingenuity. Humanity is dangerous. They are dangerous to our assumptions about what is possible. They are dangerous to our belief that some problems cannot be solved. They are dangerous to our acceptance that some situations are hopeless. The chamber was completely silent. But they are not dangerous to us. In our moment of greatest need, when our own technology failed and our own ships could not fly, humanity risked everything to save us. They asked for nothing in return except the chance to help. The vote was unanimous. Humanity would be granted a new classification, one created specifically for them. Too dangerous to ignore, too valuable to restrict. They became the first species. In galactic history, granted unlimited travel and settlement rights, with the understanding that, wherever humans went, impossible problems became solvable and hopeless situations became manageable. The human settlement became an official galactic survey training facility, where rescue teams and emergency responders came to learn from the species that had turned helping others into an art form and throughout the galaxy. When facing impossible challenges, beings began asking themselves a simple question. What would a human do? Usually, the answer changed everything.